Hi, Sasha. My current question surrounds how to handle things with my daughter, who's 17 next week, leading into her senior year and then college. In some ways, she seems to be desisting a little bit. In other ways, not at all. My approach with her has never been heavy-handed, just lovingly explaining what I've learned about the social contagion and how perfect she is. I'm wondering for senior year, do I tell her teachers that they're not to use her chosen name and male pronouns, even for teachers that she said have done this in the past? For college, do I force her to use her given name and she, her? Or do I make a contract with her that in order for us to pay for college, she must not make any medical changes or change her name legally? We live in South Carolina, but she'd like to go to an out-of-state college. Do I disallow her going to a liberal college? I know employing her critical thinking is paramount at this juncture, but it's been very hard. Communication is non-existent between us. I'm assuming she means about gender. She hates listening to podcasts, so do I make her watch Affirmation Generation with me or some other documentary about college insanity so she can recognize it and see it when she sees it? Oh, thank you for all you do. There was a really helpful parent comment underneath this, and so I want to read that as well, and then I'll share my thoughts. So another user said, of course, every situation is different, but forcing the high school to use our daughter's legal name backfired on my husband and me. The school agreed to do this only after an arduous and protracted battle involving lawyers and a significant amount of time, money, and sanity. In the end, it caused a great rift in our relationship with our daughter, who's deeply angry about the whole thing. My daughter continued to put her preferred name, male name, and pronouns on all of her assignments and in the school portal, and I strongly suspect that many of her teachers continued to use the preferred name in the classroom anyway. I worry that our efforts emboldened others to go to even greater lengths than they otherwise would have to take her under her wing and protect her from her unsupportive parents. I wish schools would be more supportive of parents on this, but they vilify us and side with the child, making matters worse. That is such an awful and I'm sure exhausting experience this family had. Imagine they got lawyers, they took this as a legal issue, and in the end, it didn't bring them closer to their daughter, and it didn't prevent the world from affirming her. So we're in such a difficult spot because you can't get the world on board with you sometimes. And, I often talk about mitigating unhelpful influences. And a lot of families do kind of take their kids out of that school or move or do things that are pretty extreme. And sometimes parents may think, why would you do something that extreme? Well, this is a great example of why. So if you can't find a way to cooperatively work with the school, I do worry that taking it in this very kind of aggressive legal direction can cause more conflict and doesn't necessarily help your relationship with your child at all. So that's a very important warning from this other parent. Now, it depends on your school district, it depends on a lot of things. But what stood out to me when I read this question is that Lori describes she's never had a heavy-handed approach. She's only explained to her daughter what she's learned about social contagion and how perfect her daughter is. So far, they have not had any meaningful, deep, thoughtful, provocative conversations about gender. It's pretty much just been, there's a social contagion going on and you're perfect just the way you are, which is actually great. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's interesting to go from that to jumping in with trying to modify the school's behavior. There's a big leap there. And for her senior year, I kind of feel like the cat's already out of the bag, and I don't know how beneficial it would be to try and walk back the school approach at this stage. I think what you probably have a better chance of doing is talking with your daughter about what the expectations are for college. Now, given that she's desisting a little bit in some ways and not other ways, I feel hesitant to get in with the gender conversation very rigidly with your daughter. But, going off to college is a new opportunity. It's a fresh start. So that might be a valuable place to set some guardrails, set some expectations, set some limits. A contract, that is a strategy that some therapists use, some parents use. I don't personally use contracts in my work with anybody because I see decisions as, like, I don't want to take anyone's autonomy from them. I mean, but then again, I'm not working with kids who are, let's say, in a, like, very deadly eating disorder, for example. If I was working with that population, I might have a different view of contracts. But your daughter seems to be doing well. She doesn't seem to be in a state of crisis. So I would suspect if you have a strong relationship, it might be entirely possible to set some guardrails around college without the use of a contract, which is such a kind of like definite and possibly confrontational intervention. It depends on the kid, depends on the person. So I would kind of borrow from the language that I offered up in the first couple of questions and think about how you want to lay out the expectations for college. I definitely think you should be mindful about where you send her. This could be a huge make it or break it situation for kids who are kind of like unsure of their identity. If she goes to the right kind of school, it could broaden her horizons. She could meet lots of different kinds of people. Unfortunately, right now, US schools are highly indoctrinating, many of them, especially the top schools, which is shocking. So I have recently been thinking a lot about schools and universities, and I've put together a new resource list, which you can find in the follow-up document, with a ton of information about US universities and higher ed issues, free speech organizations that operate on campuses. So those may help you find a university that is doing well on those metrics. There's something called the Nation's Report Card, which evaluates schools on various metrics. I think that's more for K through 12, but there are a lot of university-related resources here too. And I would also, I'll just say that there are a couple of new institutions that have been developed by a lot of heterodox thinkers and people that I really respect, people like Jonathan Haidt and John McWhorter, like individuals who are incredibly intelligent, but believe in heterodox thinking, freedom of thought, diversity of perspectives. And those are Ralston College and the University of Austin. So these are two new universities, but it may be worth looking into, especially if you have a younger teen and you want them to get, I guess it's called like a classical education. Those might be great places to go. I mean, unfortunately, I think universities are a stifling place if you have any kind of idea that diverts from what's considered like the mainstream right now. It's very unfortunate. I have some friends who are college professors, and I'm shocked at the things that I hear coming from them. So it's really disappointing, given that when I went to college, it did feel like a place where you could really learn new things and discuss complicated, difficult topics, but it's not like that anymore. So depends on where you go, of course, but I'll include those resources for you.